Welcome to the Postgame. Michael Brooks here with Matt, David, and Ben Burgis. And we have a patron here visiting us, as they do from time to time. Welcome all. We are in the Postgame, where we are going to take your calls, take your Discord questions. We have a bunch of sound to get to. We've got a whole lot of shit to do. We don't have time for all of it, frankly. But these are always action-packed, increasingly action-packed, I would say, in the post-game. Were you in Brooklyn for Bernie's thing?
No, I couldn't make it, but I watched the speech.
Yeah, what did you think?
I thought it was fantastic. You could tell that it kind of made him uncomfortable that he'd agreed that he was going to open up about his family history and everything, that he's got a really strong instinct.
He's got to
keep all that private, but I'm really glad that he did. I thought that it was really powerful.
I thought it was powerful. When he said, "I won't forget where I came from," that was so... I think navigating this conversation about identity is delicate, and I think that it's very important that people who back Bernie Sanders, particularly people like us, are very savvy and strategic about how they communicate. And that being said, it really standing there and listening about a guy who had close relatives wiped out in the Holocaust, I'm not hearing that old white man shit anymore. It's fucking disgusting. It's anti-Semitic.
It is.
It's offensive as hell. And I'm not, you can really, I've had Bill Fletcher Jr. on the show a lot. He's like a mentor to me. Yeah. And I believe he's actually is supporting Bernie. But he's had some very smart leftward critiques of Bernie. Mm-hmm. To listen to a former, some, DNC operative who has no commitment to anything dismiss him like that. They haven't put themselves on the line for a fucking thing. Yeah. That's disgusting, man. It's disgusting. I won't take that one anymore. I can hear the broader concerns and we can talk it out to the extent that's even valuable, but don't throw that line anymore.
Yeah,
it's disgusting. It's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I agree. It is anti-Semitic. It's also strange because sometimes they remember that he's Jewish and that Jewish people are historically marginalized and oppressed in the United States, because I've been in many conversations where when I have made the obvious point that Bernie Sanders would have won as the 2016 nominee, as I think anybody looking at this with any trace of objectivity would realize. I mean, granted, Martin O'Malley probably would have won too, but but Bernie certainly would have won. I've had centrist Democrats tell me, "Oh, no, but because once the Republican attack machine, blah, blah, blah," and as part of their riff about that, they'll say, "Oh, this crazy old Jewish socialist is wait a second, 10 minutes ago, he was just some old white man. He wouldn't be historic."
Right.
And now he's too much of a POC to win.
Right. No, it's ridiculous. And people, I agree completely. Let's take a call. You're calling from a 647 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hi. My name is Rio. I'm actually calling from Toronto.
Hey, what's on your mind?
I was hoping to actually speak about our favorite professor. I use giant air quotes, Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous, sorry.
No worries,
All right.
man.
So previously, Jordan Peterson has sort of couched his language and used sort of ways in which he can sort of weasel out of being told or getting backlash from what he's ultimately saying. But he's now actually done something that he can't really back away from, at least in my opinion, and that is that he is actually lobbying the government of Ontario, the provincial government, Premier Doug Ford, and he was actually lobbying to get the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal canceled or closed, specifically because they had joined a lawsuit that was started by a transgender person to stop the rollback of the updated sex ed curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And the tweet that he actually posted just before doing this, he says, the faster the Ontario Human Rights Commission is abolished, the better Ford Nation or Premier Ford. There isn't a more dangerous organization in Canada, with the possible exception of the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. Now, the latter part...
So that's just
actually
real
just
Birch Society shit right there, yeah.
Absolutely. So right now he's going from using wishy-washy language to undermine the identity of trans people to actually trying to wipe out any mention of them, because the sex ed curriculum was updated to include some progressive things. I say that again in air quotes, like the existence of cell phones and the internet. So basically the things like responsible viewing of the internet, what to do when you encounter pornography, or even consent. And of course, the mention of the existence of trans people. And this is actually something that Ford agreed with. And unfortunately, there was a lawsuit started by the Elementary School Teachers Union, the Human Rights Tribunal, the Civil Liberties Association, and a few other LGBTQA plus groups. And unfortunately, they lost. The reasoning being that the court was basically said a bullshit excuse about, oh, we can't decide on policy.
Right.
When they have intervened previously in similar situations. But in some ways, the teachers union is declaring it a victory, because the court also said at the same time, if the teachers do decide to teach the updated curriculum, there's nothing that the Ford government can do. However, that's in the background of Ford literally starting a snitch line. He even called it a snitch line to report on teachers teaching this.
Jesus Christ.
So, yeah, so this guy is a knuckle-dragging monster. I mean, he literally does not want the internet to be discussed.
So
he literally does not want
phones
to be discussed.
So I know, and I've joked about it. I mean, we did an illicit history with Luke Savage on it was something like, I forget what we called it, but something, some play on the maple leaf, like the actual, some of the far, the far right politics in Canada. It comes up actually this weekend's illicit history with Tamanisha John when we talked about Caribbean debt systems. She actually really goes into very specific role of Canada there, with regards to this just incredible exploitation of the Caribbean. So, but that being said, I mean, so there's some stuff in Canada, and then of course this Trudeau scandal. So maybe there's Canada content coming up, but I think you're right that Jordan Peterson is showing the ball. And, that is the type of very frustrating thing about talking about these guys is like, and I would say like, Ben and I are definitely not in the mode of I do think, frankly, that there are people on the left who hurl accusations of every sort without backing it up, sometimes totally incorrectly. I think that that's an actual problem. And I'll say by the same token, the idea that there were people who would say that I was being unfair by identifying Jordan Peterson as transphobic. I mean, literally the guy built his whole fucking career on transphobia, if we're being real about it, is just extraordinary.
Absolutely.
And he shows the ball. I mean, but this was a very difficult part of engaging with people like him, because if you were being objective about it from 2016, this was what he was building it on. And that was so extraordinarily frustrating and disingenuous to not be able to just say, frankly. I appreciate the call. We'll keep going. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, which you should absolutely say that Jordan Peterson is transphobic, and there's a deep and strange hypocrisy in the fact that he talks about self-authorship and, the sanctity of the individual. and his entire public persona was founded on his bold protest of saying that I'm not going to call my students what they want to be called.
Right.
Right. Like that's just absurd. And also, one interesting thing to me about that story, the snitch line, is that he's openly trying to undermine the
Academic freedom.
Academic freedom, absolutely, and he's trying to undermine the teachers union, which is very unsurprising, because I think in a lot of ways the sort of bait and switch with Peterson is that he kind of lures people in, sexually frustrated young dudes mostly, by playing on their anxieties and anger about women, and then he kind of turns around and uses that to get them behind this reactionary economic agenda, like in this case, undermining organized labor. Like there was a New York Times piece about Peterson, I think last year, where I always loved this. One of the last lines in it is it quotes this guy at a Peterson rally. And says, Andrew McCarthy, 45, a waiter, said it's great to finally hear somebody defending hierarchy. And I thought, all right, DJ, replay the tape. 45, a waiter. So how's that hierarchy working out for you?
Right, exactly. You're calling from a 646 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
They say women ramble. Jesus Christ. God.
Oh, this isn't going to be a friendly call today, is it, Monique? How are you?
No, it's not. I'm in there,
Yeah.
I'm dealing, whatever. But that was something to follow. I always have the crazy to follow. Okay. Who's the Jamaican guy? I wish I could follow him, especially his Mardi Gras, but
Well, I bet Dave from Jamaica will be calling tonight, I bet. Do you want us, we're going to make fun of Trump's speech from CPAC. You want us to do that after you get off?
First of all, great. You brought up Trump. I was trying to be nice and not even bring him up because that was my whole thing. What is wrong with you white people?
Well, Monique, you know what's wrong with us. We were bred by Dr. Jakob in a cave.
No.
And we were sent.
Yacoub, no excuse. Because I watched Louis Gates, who remember Obama had to have that summit with the white policeman after.
Yeah, I remember that when Professor Gates was arrested going into his own house.
Do that with y'all.
Yeah.
And I'm sick. You got Mark Meadows, people standing up looking like I don't even know. Oh, ask what's his name? He's from North Dakota. He knows who the lawn jockey. She stood up like a lawn jockey. And what?
Oh, she's talking about when Mark Meadows had the woman from the Trump organization stand up.
Oh, yeah.
Mark Meadows isn't from North Dakota.
Like a lawn jockey.
I have some black friends.
I'm sorry.
That's what he was saying.
Yeah.
I don't know honestly, with some of these things, Monique, I literally don't know what to tell you. Because when the thing with Professor Gates happened.
Well, since you let that crazy guy keep talking, because I'm a vent now. Because I'm so sick of you Caucasians. I don't know. What is wrong with y'all? Why do you hate us? Why do you hate black people? I know you can't answer. I know it's no. But what is the obsession with black and brown people, with Caucasians, and y'all own everything? Y'all have everything in power.
That's what it is.
What is the problem?
They want to keep it. That's it. That's what Matt just said. It's fear and keeping
economics. Okay. Y'all have the economics. So why y'all looking at us? Evidently, we don't have economic. We're not the one with the money. Who has the money? white people,
Well, not all white people.
right?
About 1% of white people have the money.
I know. Okay.
Yeah.
So why y'all looking at us crazy?
Well, that's our job is to get them to look at the 1% of white people
And
crazy and not
and
you.
that's
That's what
on
we're working
y'all.
on. That's exactly the point. Exactly. You're right. Exactly.
But stop looking at us like we're doing something wrong. But y'all, as white people, need to point that fact. That's what Dr. Martin Luther King was trying to do when he got killed.
That's right.
That's what he was trying to say. And y'all need to point that the other way.
Definitely.
It's not up to black people or brown people. Brown people are coming here for jobs, working. They're going right. They working and getting the money they can get and opening businesses. Why is this hatred not pointed at the upper percent?
That's
And
what
that's
we're working on.
you
That's
white
all we have
people.
to do.
And can I finish?
Well, Monique, I have to go in a second, though. 'Cause
That's on you. I
Yeah.
know you have to go, but I'm saying, Michael,
I agree with you.
That's on you,
I
white
agree.
people. So point that forward. Don't talk about what black people or minorities or whatever. Y'all have to ask that question. And also in the same thing, walk and chew gum. Don't put it on us black people or brown people taking less. Yeah, we taking less money because we got to feed our families. Y'all want to talk about economics? Well, you know what? Everybody blame the upper percent.
Exactly. Monique, do you want Obama or Mandela before you go?
I want everything because I'm a black woman.
You deserve everything.
So give it to me on that. You
Well,
damn
just
right.
you know that
What?
you can never
Give it
reform this devil, Monique. Look at them looking across from David Griscom. That's a devil. That's a motherfucking devil. You know he's a devil.
But I don't think.
All right. No, wait. Monique, my dear.
I don't think Mandela
Monique.
would agree with
Monique,
Obama.
my dear, drink some water. Drink some water, please. I love you.
I went and I
Good
want.
night.
I love you.
I love you.
You take care.
See you in the Upper East. Peace and love. All right, going on. We're going to take a call from a 509 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, this is Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks. I wanted to, two things. The other day I was cleaning up and I came across my copy of Red Dawn,
Yes.
Blu-ray,
Yes.
of course.
I believe we watched
and
Red
the
Dawn
last time I
together
watched-
one time.
Exactly. So the last time I watched Red Dawn was with you. And I've got a content idea, which is commentary tracks for hilarious bad movies. You're a funny guy. It's fun to watch movies with you.
Okay.
And I think you could do that. That's a Patreon level type thing. You watch. There's a great sort of Red Scare '80s movie called Red Heat. I think it's Schwarzenegger is a Soviet police officer of some kind,
That's a deep cut.
and he comes to America to solve crimes with Jim Belushi. And I think you watch these movies, you record a commentary track. You could even do it live, like on a Friday night. You know, people tune in live, watch along at home, so there's no, whatever copyright flags. And
This
a
is
little
a great
content
idea. I
idea
think
for you.
this is a new Patreon offering. This is a good idea. This is a very good idea. We have to carve some
and
time
then-
out for that and pick a movie or
yeah,
two.
yeah, kick that around. And then you guys are always saying, or at least Sam is saying that Bernie shouldn't, or whoever the Democrat is, shouldn't follow the Trump playbook, that they need to just stick to the issues. But I kind of disagree And I think there's some rad Trump moves from the campaign that Bernie could get away with copying, like when Trump read off Lindsey Graham's phone number at a press conference. And I just imagine Bernie being like, Kamala used to call me crazy. Now she likes all my ideas. Why don't we find out why? Tell you what, here's her phone number.
Should we find out why?
think-
Do we want to find out why? Okay, I think we'll find out why.
Just send an email. Here's the email.
So I think you pick 5. Yeah, I think you pick 5 to 10 things. Not all of them, but there's some really good. There's some good Trump owns, and I think that we shouldn't be afraid to, lean into that a little bit.
No, I actually think that
that's
the
all.
idea, I do disagree with Sam a little bit on that, because I think that to the extent stuff like that matters, I think that there does need to be a few real, I just fucking humiliated you moments with regards to Trump. I
And
really
honestly, I think that Bernie was test driving some of that in the Brooklyn College speech.
And he was doing I think that contrast of 25 cents a week allowance versus being a little trust fund bastard, extremely effective.
Yeah, give me 18 months of that.
Oh, yes.
Exactly. And that was real front runner shit too. Because he
Bernie
wasn't
came out
worried
strong.
about, he was just like, let's fucking doing it. Let's smack this trust fund baby bastard around.
I've been DMing Matt Duss asking if I can be hired to be in charge of nicknames for the Bernie campaign. Do you got a guy yet?
Do you have a nickname guy?
Have you been coming with nicknames for him, as you TM?
I like how Trump. I like how Bernie's so serious. He would do that this time. He's like, fine. You know what? If nicknames what it fucking takes, fine. I talked about my fucking upbringing. Hit me. I wasn't supposed to talk about getting arrested for protesting. That was an honorable activity. But if nothing's sacred, what do we have? Should we make a comment about his skin complexion because it is so freakish from the tanning beds? What direction do we go in? Are you familiar with the Niskanen Center?
To be honest, I'm only familiar with it from listening to the Chapo episode where they're making fun of this.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. I mean, that makes sense that they would have made fun of it. So, but you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
And shit, Chapo's already made fun of it. Fuck. So, anyways, we'll do a better job. I'm just kidding. So they are some type of new. I would say they're kind of more geared towards the center right. So they're even more totally because there is
Libertarian.
What'd you say?
Libertarian is what they're calling themselves.
Shut
No,
the fuck out
no.
of here.
So there's a really shitty blog called Bleeding Heart Libertarians that a lot of these guys apparently come out of, and I used to hate read this on a regular basis because they'd the format of every post was, hey, here's some perfectly reasonable thing that leftists say, but what if this thought experiment time, right? What if this grotesque inequality of wealth had come about in a totally reasonable way without violating anybody's rights? Then it would be okay, right?
Oh my god! So it's that kind of bullshit. But see, the funny thing is like it or not, and I don't like it. There is an actual there's part of Democratic electorate that you really could legitimately describe as center left. There are real people. It's not a majority. It's not a huge group, but there are real, actual, existing people in the world that aren't either at a think tank or in a TV green room that are center left.
Yeah.
There's no people who are fiscally conservative, socially liberal. They don't exist in the real world. But there are some people when Kamala Harris first put her package out, she was like Medicare for all, middle class tax cuts, and a couple. I was like, you know what? That's a lane. That is a lane that exists. There's no center right. So center right is not a thing. There's oligarchs, and then there's fascists, and then there's Democrats. Because if you're on the center, you could just be a fucking Democrat and support, Biden or whoever.
But there are a few oligarchs who are willing to throw money to people to advocate it, and that's all it takes.
And that's literally all it takes. And it's also why this video, like what I love about the Niskanen thing is that there's so much money and so much energy behind it. And we, as of the count before this show, this video we pulled from had about 300 views. And they literally have a keynote from Tony Blair, who is like it or not, this is one of the biggest political celebrities on the planet who nobody wants to hear from. And
How
the
many,
fact
how
that
many views was that?
700, excuse me, I thought it was less, but 700. I mean, that's under 1,000 views.
Jesus.
That's incredible.
That's bad. If we put out a video like that on the TMBS channel, even now,
Just
come
getting
on.
started.
Yeah,
it's like,
I was
oh
just-
shit, 700
I was
views.
just
That's not
thinking,
good.
like, if I put out a video for 0 books and only got 700 views, I'd be so fucking embarrassed.
Right.
Yeah. It was like, but the whole first 30 minutes of this video, which I had to sit through, is just like 4 really boring guys talking about Aristotle and moderation. Right? Like, there's nothing that's exciting about that, honestly.
Well, here's what's exciting is you get a war criminal who does all sorts of advising for any bloody Central Asian or Middle Eastern dictatorship possible to come repeat the same talking points that still makes him like historically unpopular in the UK.
Which, by the way, let's think about that transition from Aristotle to Tony Blair. So like, oh yeah, so like you should always walk the path of moderation because virtue is always in between 2 vices. You should be careful not to rock the boat too much one way or the other. And here's the guy who gave us the invasion of Iraq.
Right. Well, here's the guy, although he did apparently, according to a lot of credible reporting, supposedly he had sex with Wendy Murdoch while Rupert Murdoch was like still contributing money. So that's pretty cool.
It was moderate sex.
Yeah,
though.
it was just like, we need to find a third way between you giving me money and me not having sex with your wife. If Iraq is defined as a success, if it's a functioning democracy with protection for ethnic minorities, then that's one thing. But if success is defined as totally getting it on with Wendy Murdoch in a hot tub in California, then it was a fantastic success. All right, here is Tony Blair.
So you can't attack populism without confronting the genuine issues that drive it, in my view. The questions the populists raise.
This sounds quasi-promising. I wonder which legitimate concern Tony Blair is going to zero in on.
Are often right. The trouble is they're more interested in finding scapegoats than solutions. Second, the challenge is then to provide the solutions and enlarge the policy debate. Let me say what I mean by that. The modus operandi of the populist is to take an issue and make a completely outsized policy proposal around it, something which sounds transformative and off the scale. It doesn't actually matter if the policy is unworkable. Indeed, in fact, it's an advantage for them because it's so far out, it sucks the air out of the rest of the political space.
Just like Wendy.
Moderate politics, by contrast, looks boring and overcomplicated. So moderate politics must also do radical. This is an era where people want change. They want big solutions, not timid ones, not increments, but quantum leaps forward. We need to know how we will rekindle the generational promise that the next generation can expect to do better than the present. The rupture of that promise has created a politics of pessimism, and populism thrives in an atmosphere of pessimism. Central to this renewal is an understanding of the future and how it can be governed. For example, we are at the beginning of a technological revolution as far-reaching in its effects as the 19th century industrial revolution.
As an example, I could hit Wendy on WhatsApp.
This is the big challenge
while I'm
facing
in the
governments,
same
the
room
economy,
as
and
Rupert.
society over the coming 2 decades.
Tap it later.
The revolution offers
Gotta stop
enormous
talking about
opportunities,
that. Makes me kinda like
but
Tony
also
Blair.
means displacement of jobs,
It
changes
is the
in working
cool
and
thing
living,
about Tony Blair.
and has a series of
He's a good
profound impacts
communicator, and he
on the
got
privacy of the citizen.
Wendy Murdoch while she was married.
Now,
to Rupert
populism
Murdoch. That's cool.
has no real desire to grapple with the complexity of this challenge. Actually, they're more likely to make technology a target of the
As
populists.
an example, Rupert would say,
But
"Stop
we,
having sex with my wife."
From the center,
And I would say,
should
"Let's
master this
innovate
issue.
a new dynamic."
Griscom wants to point out
All right.
the crappy
Oh yes, this is an
vacuum
important
seal
part.
windows. They have.
Apparently, the oligarchs weren't too generous. Griscom, what do you see?
Apparently, the oligarchs couldn't use a hair dryer to. What we're supposed to do is
My
hair
family
dryer
did
over the
this when
top.
we were broke and like our windows got broke and we
Yeah.
put trash bags over them. This is like a fucking multi-million-dollar think tank.
I also want to know which populists these are who are demonizing technology and going after technology. Like,
Fuck technology. Take out your iPhones, throw it in the water.
Yeah, no, that was the
We'll
best.
never beat Jeff Bezos if you keep having high-speed internet.
It's like as if like there's some like contemporary populist politician who's doing like the Pol Pot thing. Let's clean out the cities,
Well, what he's doing here, well, first of all, Tony Blair will mention inequality in passing, but much more often when he talks about legitimate grievances, he pivots to immigration because he's willing to make right-wing compromises.
He does that somewhere in this speech too.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. And so but then the other thing he's doing when he just generically says big things is he's basically equating like build that wall with Medicare for all. These are all just big things. And then the technology thing means anything that can intervene in the labor market is anti-technology. And then the last thing that's really funny about this is I love the fact that people whose brains are literally in a stasis state of the 1990s when it was trendy to use words like new and innovative and quantum leap are like revealing how totally out of date they are by talking about how new they are.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like, so populist here, I mean, the whole point is to use a term that's so vague that it can literally apply to both social democrats and fascists.
Exactly.
And so, and yeah, clearly I was trying to think, okay, populist, clearly one of the people he means when he says populist is Bernie Sanders, whose signature policy proposal is Medicare for all, which he's, when Tony Blair is talking about, things that are so big, they're totally unworkable. In his home country, they already have something that goes much further than Medicare for all, right?
Which he always was trying to privatize and fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, he was always trying to undermine it, but he wasn't totally successful.
Talking about Sanders, but I do think his main target is Corbyn.
Yeah.
But yes, but it is interesting, the formulation of these people is like, in the same week that this happened, Brad DeLong gave an interview in Vox, which we should have printed, but like Brad DeLong is it was a Clinton administration economics official, and he is like a proper conservative, moderate neoliberal Democrat. And he came out in Vox and he's like, look, first of all, Obama came into office with, he said, Mitt Romney's healthcare plan, George Herbert Walker Bush's climate plan, and John McCain's immigration plan. And he's like, and they just trashed Obama for 8 years. And he's like, our job as moderates is different now. He's like, the social democrats are in control. They've won. They've won the argument. They take pole position, and my job is to help them make their policies better.
Yeah.
So there's like an example of a centrist person who's actually committed to a center-left project and reading the dynamics. Tony Blair and Niskanen will always end up just like demonizing the left, and then in his case, he literally goes and hangs out with fascists.
Right.
He's been pictured with Bolsonaro. He's been pictured with I'm forgetting his name, but the horrible guy in Italy. Mm-hmm. He was lobbying for a natural gas pipeline that would go through a sensitive eco area when he was pictured with that guy. But this is the whole Niskanen thing. And then what was the other big news that Niskanen made? What did they do to Marshall Steinbaum, or how did that? Maybe they didn't do it, but they had a little.
So Marshall Steinbaum tweeted something out.
So Marshall Steinbaum is just a good economic
Econ Marshall
guy.
is his,
he's literally named Econ Marshall.
Yeah.
He's not one of these like mean lefty guys on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm looking for if we have that old tweet, but basically he said something, and Will Wilkerson.
So he tweeted out, I'll paraphrase it, but he literally tweeted out something to the effect of billionaires are a luxury we can't afford anymore. It was like a provocative way of saying we need to tax them so we can pay for a decent society.
We literally can't afford them.
Because we literally cannot afford to have, like actually that's a very literal statement. It's a slightly provocative literal statement. And Will Wilkerson, who's that would be from your favorite blog.
Lady Heart Libertarians.
And a total weenie wussbag putz schmuck did what?
He quote tweeted that and said, "This is a threat." And I mean, in some sense, I guess. Can you not make
like
threats?
by threat? You might have like 9 homes
taxes.
instead of 13.
Yeah. And Marshall got basically. I'm not sure exactly what happened behind the scenes. Basically, his Twitter went dark for a few days, and it looked like he got basically, shamed or harassed off Twitter by nerds. Basically, he's back now though. You should follow him. Check him out.
Yes, indeed.
Which, I mean, it's also amazing. Like the Brad DeLong thing, like that statement, that's interesting because like that shouldn't be unusual. Like given the way that like a lot of moderate liberals present themselves, as like kind of technocrats who aren't really interested in changing our vision for what society should be, but they're just interested in kind of giving you the wonky 411 about how to get there.
Right.
And if that branding was authentic, then what Brad DeLong is saying is what all those guys should be saying right now. Because, yeah, clearly the center of gravity has moved in a social democratic direction. So if you're actually interested in being a liberal technocrat, you should be helping to devise the most technically effective ways of carrying out social democratic policies, which really, I mean, gotta say, not to be too nerdy in the post game, but to go back to the Hume point, does get back to that point that like these guys about facts and values, these guys aren't just
board, please. Oh, Jesus, man. I feel like all of a sudden I'm like Sam.
I had my own drop.
Where's
ready.
my boy?
That'll keep the testosterone flowing.
I had that one ready. I was waiting for him to start.
But yeah, these guys aren't technocrats. These guys aren't technocrats. Right. They're centrist ideologues.
Right. That's exactly the point. All right. I apologize in advance. We definitely won't get to all calls. Apologies, but you're calling from a 201 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
What's up, gentlemen? It's Sean from Queens. How you doing?
Good, Sean. How you doing? What's on your mind?
I'm good. I'm about half as where Monique was. So, I'm about to spit. But first of all,
we
I'm
all
watching
are.
Death Wish, the 1977 version on Amazon, and I'm rethinking my whole political ideology.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Bronson's getting to you, huh, man?
He's getting to me, man. He went to Arizona. He discovered guns.
It's a good thing Bronson
Jeff
didn't see that
Goldblum
tweet, or
was
he would have
like-
gone after the billionaires
Yeah, that's right.
instead of the young
Yeah.
punks
Jeff
in the city.
Goldblum was like a total asshole. I want to shoot him too.
All right, Sean. You
Anyway,
got anything else for us before we hang the fuck up on you?
Yeah, I do have something else here. I just wanted to put it to you all right, so the evangelical right wing supports Israel across the board.
Right.
Yet their inner belief is that the fall of Israel will bring about the Messiah.
Right.
So my question is, why don't they support ISIS?
I don't have an answer for that type of airtight logic. Thank you, Sean. Like trying to lure me into a fucking clippable. All right.
Should bring this down and make a 10-second serious point here, which is that actually this is the other half of what we were talking about with the Ilhan Omar thing.
Right.
That most American Jews do not have Ben Shapiro-style views about Israel, and most people who have Ben Shapiro-style views about Israel are not Jews. They're evangelical Christians.
100%. Let's do this because what the hell? It's a highlight. Donald Trump's best ofs at CPAC. He's still not as funny as he was when he first ran for president. In fact, he's a fucking nuisance. And I would just like to say, I've heard many people saying as a result of the Cohen testimony that apparently, and many people think this and say this, I don't know, but you hear things, that his SAT scores and marks in high school and college were terrible and pathetic and embarrassing and very bad. And China is watching. And China sees us and they're laughing at us. So we need to release these scores immediately so we know if our president is stupid or not, because China knows and they're laughing. And that's a very bad thing for this country and a very sad thing. Okay, this is Donald Trump at CPAC.
Now, the Green New Deal, right? Darling, is the wind blowing today? I'd like to watch television, darling. Russia, please, if you can, get us Hillary Clinton's emails. Please, Russia, please. He asked Russia to go get the emails. We're going to look into his finance. I said, where did that come from? He always talked about Russia. The Attorney General says,
Actually,
I'm
should
going to
we
recuse
pause it?
myself.
How about we play it with just sound so there isn't any possibility of any bullshit?
I don't think we'll get anything.
Okay, all right. All right, Guardian, we're counting on you to not be cops. And by the way, this only helps the Guardian because your fucking logo's all over it. Jesus Christ. All right, keep going.
And I said, why the hell didn't he tell me that before I put him in? Russia, 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 Russia. My wife said, you never spoke to anybody from Russia, darling. I said, that's right. President Trump is waiting for the Mueller report. He's bad. He's a bad guy. But you know what I like about this? Number one, I'm in love, and you're in love. We're all in love together. We've done something that nobody's ever done. Don, how you doing? Hey, Donnie. I love you, Donnie. For 35 years now, they call Mr. President, sir. How are you? Trains to Hawaii. How do you get to Europe? We haven't figured that one out yet. We don't use airplanes anymore. Is doing well, except, of course, for the never-Trumpers. But they are on mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. You don't get rich by sitting behind a desk, so I didn't want to do that. And I'm in the White House, and I was lonely. I said, let's go to Iraq. Okay, General Raisin Cane, how fast can... Sir, we can have it totally finished in 1 week. I said, 1 week? And yet I see senators that are there for 20 years. White hair.
Are coming, man.
See, I don't have white hair. Yes, I agree with this. This speech should have been delivered 1 year from now, not now, damn it. Because they're going to grit together. They're going to say, you know, this guy's really laying for us. I should have saved the Pocahontas thing for another year. Instead, we believe in free speech, including online and including on campus. Today, I'm proud to announce that I will be very soon signing an executive order requiring colleges and universities to support free speech if they want federal research.
Well, that's a war on academic freedom. That's actually a serious point at the end there, which is the end point of all this IDW shit is actually a war on academic freedom and campus activism.
Yep.
But what did you think of the logic of those arguments there, Ben?
He convinced me.
What is the difference between leftists and liberals, though? That liberals go, "Oh my God, this is," and then we're all just like, "That's pretty funny." It wasn't as funny as the time with Marco Rubio's water, though. That was the classic.
No, but Trump is hilarious. I never pretended not to think he was hilarious.
Here, this is awesome. So check this out. So Trump invited, what is this, college football?
This is North Dakota State University Bison.
Okay, but what sport is it?
It's Division II football.
Division
and
II
NDSU has dominated Division II for years. And once again, they won the championship. And Bison offensive guard Jack Albrecht, who I just followed on Twitter, was there. And I like this quote here. Let's see if you can read it maybe.
All right, so we have this up on screen?
Yeah.
All right, in news release late Monday night, the Red River Valley chapter, this is okay, I'll read from the top. All right, yeah, no, I know. Albrecht, a 6-foot, 285-pound junior guard, was sporting a pin bearing the Democratic Socialists of America logo.
You have that exact same pin.
In a news release late Monday night, the Red River Valley chapter of the group pointed out to Trump that Trump said in the State of Union address that America will never be, quote unquote, a socialist country. But less than a month later, he invited a socialist to the White House for a free lunch, organizer Zach Acola wrote in the release. That's awesome.
There we go.
Got a main one.
See the pin, and
you could see that jackass bloviating in the background, and he's got his DSA pin. It's so awesome, and Trump's telling some stupid stuff. Trump's probably telling them like it was called Studio 51, Studio 57, and then that was the second time I had an orgy on my boat. And he's
he was recapping his speech to the Boy Scouts.
Right, he was recapping his speech to the Boy Scouts. Exactly that. Why should you go to literally the Boy Scouts of America? Is like. That'd be so great if Obama was like, and that's when I realized that you people are fucking irredeemable.
Well, that's when the Boy Scouts had to apologize for, right? Like saying
they literally had to apologize to the parents that the president addressed them. Anyways, that guy is cool.
I got my apologizing for the president merit badge.
That was yeah. You're calling from a 213 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, it's Tom from Yakubia.
Hey, Tom. Tom from Ecubia. What's going on, Tom? What's on your mind?
Remember me? I'm the Sasquatch-looking motherfucker from the Bell House.
I do remember you, Tom. I do remember you. What's on your mind, my friend?
Hard to forget. Well, I just happened to get the night off work. I work second shift, and I want to tell you about some intimidation audits they had at work about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
We've been working like 10, 11-hour shifts for 6 months, and people were grumbling a lot, and I guess some people on first shift were talking about forming a union, and me and my buddy on second shift have been talking about it, and we had set up a meeting for a guy the next day. And they had us in there, and they had somebody from corporate, a lawyer from corporate was saying, well, you have a right to form a union if you want to, but if you do form a union, the company can still do whatever it wants, and there's no guarantee you'll get a negotiation, what you might get a worse deal than you have now, a better deal, or the same deal. And people got really intimidated by it. One gal who was like the first person I got to sign a card, and I asked her because she was always talking about her gun rights. She got her boyfriend an AR-15 for his birthday. So I was like, if you're big on your Second Amendment rights, how are you on your organizing rights, your labor rights? And she said, well, I'm big on those. She's like, I had a union at my last job, so she signed the card and everything. After the intimidation audits, she was intimidated. She's like, well, I don't have a backup job. I don't have a backup plan, and I'm scared. And I was like, oh, now you're scared. Now you don't want your rights and your liberty and your freedom. You're always banging on about your gun rights. And geez, when they do come to take the guns away, she'll just give them to them. So
I'll be taking that, Whitey. So I mean, this is obviously common.
The next day, we met with a guy from the union, me and my buddy from work, and a couple other people were going to come, but they got scared. And the guy's like, "That's okay, don't just lay low, And I think when they had those meetings, it wasn't even for us on the second shift, for me and my buddy, that we'd gotten like a dozen cards signed. It was stuff they don't even know about us. So we're under the radar, which is, it's all very conspiratorial, very fun in that sense.
That does sound, but it's just fucking criminal the intimidation against you, it's unbelievable.
It's fucking disgusting.
Right.
It's really disgusting when you think about that. You're working your job, and these people, and I left there, and they were terrified. And I wanted to go to the guy, the head guy, big boss man, say, proud of yourself. I wanted to say all kinds of stuff in the meeting. It's like, yeah, but it is our right to organize. If we decide to have a vote, we can call for a vote. We can do that. I didn't want to draw attention to myself.
No, you shouldn't. You should be strategic, but you're absolutely right. It's
exactly.
disgusting. It's fucking disgusting.
And this is really interesting. In the meeting, there was a guy who's been working there a few weeks. He kind of bugs me a little bit. Kind of talks a lot, yammers a lot, and he raised his hand during the information meeting about the union and says, "Oh, yeah, at my last place we had a union, and they were good sometimes, but we went out on strike and they didn't help us at all." So I'm thinking, oh, this is some meathead who was going to be anti-union.
Right.
And then I was talking with some folks a couple days, like a week later, and this one lady was saying, "Yeah, I'm interested in union. My husband is too." And I was like, "Oh, cool." I gave her a couple of cards, and her husband's this guy, and I'm like, "Oh shit." He's like, "Oh yeah." He goes, "I think a union's a really good idea." I'm talking to him. He goes, "I think a union's a really good idea." I said that in the meeting, because he was being strategic too. Awesome.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I got to, it's throwing them off the scent is really good.
That's great, but it's disgusting. You have to go through this process of what should be just a basic democratic right. Thanks a million for the call, man.
Yeah,
please keep us
right.
posting on this if you can.
I will. Thanks for calling. Thanks for taking
man.
my call.
Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Solidarity. You know what? Let's just run through these 3 pieces of sound. Let's start with Barry Weiss on The View, because I want to really keep exercising Ben's intellect here.
So we've talked about this offline, personally, and now on the show, but it's easy to spot anti-Semitism when it's a bunch of crazy people with tiki torches screaming Jews will not replace us.
Yes.
What's trickier is tweets like Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's recently deleted about how Israel has, quote, hypnotized the world to carry out, quote, evil.
That was 2012. She said recently deleted. It might have been recently deleted, but it was tweeted out in 2012.
That is harder to spot as anti-Semitic, which makes it more dangerous, you think. How so?
Does make it more dangerous because, as you said, when you see people marching with tiki torches or you hear the Pittsburgh killer writing on social media, all Jews must die, that's very obviously eliminationist. The problem with anti-Semitism from the far left is that it oftentimes is smuggled into the mainstream under the guise of progressive values. So it says about itself, I'm just standing up for the downtrodden Palestinians, which they are. I am just standing up for justice. I'm standing against racism. And so that kind of language is a siren song, including to Jews, 75% of whom vote for Democrats. And so that's the problem with it, is that it's not as easy to spot, oftentimes because it says we're just about criticizing Israel. In the case of
Did Nancy Pelosi shut it down?
Nancy Pelosi shut it down very aggressively with Ilhan Omar. The problem is that she still has a spot on the Congressional Foreign Affairs Committee, and that's a real question.
No, that's actually exactly where she belongs, and she showed the ball there in terms of what the actual agenda is, in terms of what we talked about earlier. Ben, I mean, look, that's the one. It's funny because they're picking something from a very long time ago, which you actually like. That is a ill-chosen tweet.
It is.
Fair enough. That's before she's in elected office, and it is extraordinary. I mean, first of all, Barry Weiss, as a college activist, tried to suppress this academic freedom of academics who spoke about Israel and Palestine. And secondly, even if you wanted to critique that tweet, this whole woman's brand is built on promoting people that promote the bell curve.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No, that's right. That we should we shouldn't say that the IDW, who she created as a brand, are misogynist because what they say about the differences between men and women. We shouldn't say that that people are racist, because they're promoting narratives that have been extremely disadvantageous to black people. But in this case, right, you should essentially hone in on left-wing advocacy for Palestinian human rights until you can hear the anti-Semitism.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's harder to hear in the same sense that it's harder to hear the satanic messages and Zeppelin records played backwards than it is to hear the lyrics played forward, because they're not there unless you're primed by a narrative that tells you to listen for them.
Right.
You're not going to get it. But I mean, she's just helping herself to the conclusion that left-wing advocacy for Palestinians comes not from application of universal values, but from anti-Semitism. And then she's just working backwards from the conclusion. So therefore, even if it seems like they're just making perfectly reasonable objections to egregious human rights abuses and upholding liberal democratic standards that would be uncontroversial in most contexts, there must really be anti-Semitism, but it's just so much more subtle than the right-wing anti-Semitism that you just have to listen really, really closely for it.
2 quick things. # we stand with Ilan. She's a hero, and she needs to stay on the Foreign Relations Committee, and we need to fight any Democratic crap that could throw her to the
any hint they're caving on that, get on them.
Get on them, and get them on them about this censure and all of this bullshit. And secondly, let's title this video something like Barry Weiss caught in major logic fail. Joe Biden.
It is an accomplishment to be sitting right next to Meghan McCain and be saying more ridiculous things.
Yes, that is a standout to be in any clip where you sound worse than Meghan McCain. Mike Bloomberg is out. And I liked how in the New York Times report they said that although his strategist saw a path. It's like, sure.
It's what their job is.
First of all, it's what their job is. And secondly, you spent months That was not going to happen. And the thing to watch about Mike Bloomberg is, he said that he's going to put, and he did his characteristic, any oligarch, of course, trying to threaten the Democratic Party from nominating Bernie Sanders. But he still is committed. He's trying to show himself as being genuinely concerned about getting rid of Trump and not like a narcissistic, delusional dingbat like Howard Schultz. So the test is going to come down with Mike Bloomberg and all of these people that if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, or Elizabeth Warren for that matter, then what are you going to do? I obviously have my doubts. But a big reason that Mike Bloomberg doesn't see a lane for himself is because, let's be real here. Joe Biden is an infinitely more credible and talented politician. He might be running. Joe Biden has you don't need to search anything. This guy has a terrible record in just every conceivable way, from credit cards to Iraq to Anita Hill to antitrust. And here he is talking about his role in the prison.
School integration, that when not the 1960s stuff, but the 1970s busing battles, he was a hardcore opponent of using busing to racially integrate school districts.
Absolutely. And here he is and then fast forward to the 90s, where of course he was, along with the Clintons, a major proponent of the prison industrial complex. Here he is talking about his reflections on that.
Another thing about how perspectives change over time. Bobby Rush, member of Congress, said the other day, "I'm ashamed that I voted for the '94 crime bill." You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. And in fact, I drafted the bill, as you remember.
I know that.
And by the way, we talk about this mostly in terms of Black Lives Matter. Black lives really do matter. But the problem is institutional racism in America. That's the overarching problem that still exists. And we should be talking about it. And you look at it, the legacy of racism in housing and jobs and so on. So, but having said that, if you take a look at the crime bill, of the money in the crime bill, the vast majority went to reducing sentences, diverting people from going to jail for drug offenses into what I came up with, the drug courts, providing for boot camps instead of sending people to prison so you didn't relearn whatever the bad thing that got you there in the first place. Put 100,000 cops in the street. When community policing was working, neighborhoods were not only safer, but they were more harmonious. And when the reason why the cops originally opposed my 100,000 cops for this community policing piece is because it's high intensive and it means they got to get out of their cars. So they literally got out of their cars and learned who owned the local drugstore, the local neighborhood bar, whatever. And they were engaged in the neighborhood, which built confidence so that the woman, the African-American woman living in a corner alone where the drug deal's going down in front of her house knows she literally used to have your phone number as a cop. She'd call you and say, "John, they're out in front of my house, but you're not giving me away, right, John?" No. And it didn't. So we had enormous success. Now what's happened is we've cut the funding 85%. We've gone out there and we're going through Baltimore now. Look at the areas we're going through here. I'll lay you 8-5. The Baltimore Police Department is considerably smaller than it was in 1985. There are things I would change. I opposed, for example, the carjacking provision that the administration wanted in. But by and large, what it really did, it restored American cities.
So basically, again, this bill led to a record prison expansion there's a reason the United States just has the most people in prison, period. It's not even proportional, as far as I understand. It's just more than China. It's not even per population.
Incarcerate more people per capita than, I think there's might be one island nation that's technically throwing off the curve, but pretty much than any other country in the world.
So that's what that bill did, period. And even things like boot camps were a militarization of juveniles and sending them into prison prison pipelines. Absolutely. And I don't know. And again, there's been a lot of research that whether it was changes in the environment or changes in the economy, those broader trends for American cities were happening regardless of a huge increase. And he doesn't get it.
And look, and when he's talking about Baltimore, right, they're talking about it being a smaller police force, which I don't know the specifics on that.
Yeah.
Baltimore's police force is insanely
Notoriously
militarized.
abusive and
Well, not only they're
militarized.
notoriously abusive, but like the police force itself is insanely militarized, using
Right.
like military surveillance equipment, weapons. I mean, it's wild to sort of talk about like, oh, well, if we just had more police on the street
And more
right,
funding? What the fuck is he talking
I know,
about?
it's absolutely wild.
No,
I love the gall of him being like, first things, Black Lives Matter, they have some issues, but what they really should be focusing on
Yeah,
is
who are you to set the that's exactly right. I mean, first of all, who the fuck are you to set the Black Lives Matter policy agenda? Black Lives Matter emerged and has spoken on a variety of issues, but it emerged literally out of police murdering black people on the street. Who are you to and then, by the way, if you're concerned about things like housing discrimination, I don't know what his record on housing discrimination is. I know what his record on things like credit card bills are and bankruptcy, which are full frontal attacks on all of the non-wealthy in this country. So he has no credibility on even what he's trying to point to in his own ridiculous, arrogant redefinition of structural racism.
Especially in a city like Baltimore. But
Right.
And just one more thing about Biden, I think it's going to come out during this campaign, is Biden has a lot of popularity because a lot of people associate him with Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
The more that he has to stand alone, I feel like that veneer is going to drop very quickly.
I agree.
And people are going to recognize the kind of person that Joe Biden is.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's going to crash and burn actually pretty epically.
First of all, there's no way. He's just leaving behind a trail of prima facie Me Too issues like slime behind him, right? I mean, there's some stuff. I think that's a pretty safe bet, right? That some stuff's going to come out there. And yeah, I mean, in terms of stuff like this, like if you read Rise of the Warrior Cop by Radley Balko, about the militarization of police and the weakening of rules against search and seizure and all that over the last few decades, Joe Biden's name is all over that book, because he consistently, year after year, decade after decade, he was one of the worst offenders in the Senate in terms of pushing civil liberties rollbacks and police militarization.
Speaking of right-wing politicians that it would be great if they could go away, look, to be honest with you, if Hillary Clinton was somebody who was putting all of her time into, say, voting rights, and her legacy was going to be, because regardless of what you think of Hillary Clinton, I'm not a fan because I have left politics. But if she focused on certain policy sets and wasn't constantly along with this crew trying to undermine Bernie Sanders and trying to relitigate 2016, if it was just like, look, this is a person that whatever else you think of could have been the first woman president, and she lost to this like grotesque misogynist, fair enough. And I would have nothing else really to say. But if Hillary Clinton is going to come out and try to undermine really important things that need to happen in this country, we're going to need to note that. And I also think the framing that she's doing here speaks to a certain kind of, boomerism and narcissism that is really problematic.
I'm not running, but I'm going to keep working and speaking and standing up for what I believe. I'm going to keep speaking out. I'm not going anywhere. What's at stake in our country, the kinds of things that are happening right now are deeply troubling.
Oh, my gosh.
Also, Chelsea Clinton is canceled for what she did to Ilhan.
Yeah, Chelsea Clinton's disgusting what she did to Ilhan Omar. I mean, the temerity of somebody who's had everything handed to them
As an American.
trying to undermine an immigrant who fled a war zone, a refugee who's now one of the most important dynamic progressive leaders in this country. It's disgusting. And Hillary Clinton, those fucking morons in her campaign leaking the lies about Bernie, about the fucking private jets. This guy went across the country for them. And not only did he go across the country for them, he had advisors from his campaign warning them about the horrifying strategic mishaps they were making by not going to campaign in the Midwest. It's enough. It's really enough. All right, let me take some Discord questions. We obviously got to wrap up fairly soon. Can the crew talk about the argument about rapid rise in minimum wage will lead to automation? Ben.
Or do you want to take it, David?
David Griscom. Talking over our guest. Very rude. I told you this kid's a fucking non-professional.
One thing about automation that we really need to recognize is that what's happened. People have been warning about automation, what that's going to do to the labor market for a very long time. And what we see is that when it comes to low-wage work, that there's really just been shifting of the workforce. The most disruptive technologies that we've seen, like on the economic level, has been increases in transportation and in communication, which has allowed like a lot of low-wage manufacturing work to be done elsewhere and to be imported back into the United States. So I don't know if the minimum wage is really going to be the driving factor in kind of increasing automation in the United States.
Yeah. So one thing I'd add to that is that if you look at some of those studies we were talking about earlier during the main show about the relationship between minimum wage and employment, one of the things that seems to show is that even though what you get from the first chapter of the Econ 101 textbook is that, labor is like any other commodity, that's going to be subject to those supply and demand curves. But actually what the studies seem to show is that the demand for labor really isn't that elastic. It's a lot harder to replace, than other things. That if you have, so I would say that the idea that there's going to be some automatic correlation between paying people more and introducing this technology is probably misguided. I think it's probably much more of a blunt calculation than that. It's not like, we're paying such and such percent more, now it's suddenly worth it. I think that if you could replace a McDonald's worker with a screen, you're going to do it regardless of what the minimum wage is. In fact, I've seen that example being used to sort of scare people about minimum wage increases. But if you look at where that was introduced, that, first, like that tended to be in states that hadn't done these minimum wage hikes. And I mean, Griscom is absolutely right. People have been saying the robots are coming since, I don't even know, the 70s, the 50s,
maybe even the 50s.
Oscar Wilde. Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh, nice. A little literary hangover thing there. So they had a...
Stay tuned.
And of course, that prediction has failed to pan out many times. And there's a discussion that economists and futurists can have about whether we should expect the pattern to continue, that as certain jobs are automated away, new jobs are created, by those same economic changes, or whether there is going to be permanent, long-term structural unemployment caused by automation, right? And that's a complicated empirical argument. But one point that's worth keeping in mind is if you're really worried that the robots are coming and we're going to have long-term structural unemployment because of that, then you should be a socialist. Because under capitalism, if automation means that you have less work to do, then some people lose their jobs and other people have to work as hard as ever. But with workers' control of the means of production, workers can just vote themselves fewer hours.
And that sounds a lot better than some here's a little bit of UBI, go sit and be useless.
Exactly.
Hey, Michael, are you interested in getting candidates on TMBS? If so, getting Sanders and Warren would be awesome. There's definitely some areas they could improve on. Sesta Fosta. I mean, obviously I'll make a shot I have connections to Bernie's campaign, so that's possible. We'll see.
Nice.
In general, I would like, obviously, to interview Ilhan Omar, but, politicians are
Sam's
not...
rule is
yeah,
right.
Sam's right. Politicians in general, not terribly
I still remember we had Tim Canova on in 2016, and that was against Sam's better
judgment. I mean, honestly, to be really blunt about it, a prime reason I'd have a lot of people on right now would be just to be like, what are you going to do about Lula? Honestly. I think there's some specific issues that I'd like to get people on, but in general, in my limited experience, but also from being around the show, it's infinitely more valuable to talk to Ben, than most politicians, including really good ones. I mean, they just have to be on script in a certain way.
They basically have to be Bernie almost to be worth it.
Basically. Are we seeing the development of an alpha Tony Blair as a character? Yeah, actually, I kind of like that. It's not bad. Wendy, maybe you should call Rupert the next time we have date night. Yes. That way you can tell him you love him. He's getting cocked so hard. Does Ben Burgis have anything to say about your logic and consistency arguments? Oh, shit. Put on the spot here.
Yeah, I've caught Michael in several fallacies. He's canceled.
Do yourself a favor and do not watch the Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, Jack Dorsey interview. The stupidity will melt your brain. I can really...
already committed to doing myself that favor.
I was going to say, I gotcha. Michael, get DJ Danarchy to add a mixtape with your book. Boom, sales spike. That's actually a great idea. Okay, this was the question from Nam Dinette. We already addressed that with the call about Peterson and Ford. That's a fucking travesty. K-State Nate. Michael, have you seen the second episode of Desus and Mero where out of nowhere Mero is mocking Ben Shapiro? I wonder what percentage of the audience knew who he was mocking. I wish I was among them.
Yeah, I'm mixed about that because part of me loves that they go off on Ben Shapiro and they called Van Jones like a corporate plant the other day.
Yeah.
The other part of me is like, cool. I listened to this show to get away from all this shit.
Right.
And now it's all crossing over, which I mean,
Right.
fair enough, but whatever.
It is all bleeding a little bit. Question from Middle Winnipeg Craig. Michael, I want to tell you the same thing that my mother once said to me. If those boys are trying to make you do a food bucket challenge and they're not your real friends, will you consider doing an alternative reward for those of us who care about your well-being?
They are our real patrons.
Maybe a
more
thumbs up
important.
selfie during a spa day pedicure. That's fucking amazing. I can guarantee you at 2,500 patrons,
We're doing a spa
I will
day.
send a photo of a thumbs up while I'm at a spa day. And that's the truth. I will absolutely do that. All right.
Tell me we're doing the gulag.
Okay, we will do the gulag. Who are we putting into the gulag?
Oh, we should have done it before the Barry Weiss clip. Do we want to just retroactively?
Barry Weiss it?
Well, because we wanted to
Oh
do
yeah, we wanted
Ilhan.
to do all critics of Ilhan Omar.
Every segment basically is about Ilhan today.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the gulag.
Mass trial.
Mass trial. Music, please. In the future, we might do a couple of truth and reconciliation commissions, but this is a mass trial. Ben?
I'm just
Wait,
very.
play more.
We're processing so many people in the trial. We don't have time. You
We
know?
don't have time. It's just like, come on.
You get one per every time a sentence is announced. You hear this.
All right. I would like to sentence Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, Barry Weiss,
Brett Stevens.
Oh, definitely Brett Stevens.
Chelsea Clinton.
Vargas, Congressman Vargas. The entire editorial board of the Ford newspaper.
New York Times editorial
New York
board.
Times editorial board.
Washington Post. Don't forget that.
The Washington Post. Oh, God, yes. The motherfucking Washington Post. Every single person who's done a fucking dumb tweet about her.
AOC.
Donald Trump.
AOC for not having her back. Donald Trump's advising her for calling her human filth. And for every single person that after they saw that quote didn't realize, oh, I need to get my head in the fucking game right now.
The assholes in West Virginia.
The assholes in West Virginia. Benjamin Netanyahu for running an apartheid state that Ilhan Omar got in trouble for criticizing. Ben Shapiro for existing. The intellectual dark web for whining about YouTube monetization when a congressperson is going to be publicly subjected to harassment for stating a policy position. Barry Weiss, again. And obviously Meghan McCain. I don't even know if she even did anything wrong in this instance, but of course.
Just to be safe.
Yeah, fuck McCain. Ben, let's go. All right, come on, guys. We've got to keep going here. This is an omnibus.
Just to both sides at the House of Saud, all of them.
Oh, yeah, definitely the House of Saud. Everybody in the House of Saud. Griscom. Okay, Howard Schultz.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure his take is bad.
Howard, all lists are acted on Schultz.
Yeah. Hey.
Charles Rangel.
Charles Rangel. Wait, Charles Rangel said something? Is Charles Rangel even still alive?
Zach Beauchamp from Vox.
Yeah, Zach Beauchamp from Fox. Yeah. What did he do?
He was just in the replies. He got in an argument with Corey Robin about.
Oh, well, fuck him.
Oh, yeah.
He got into an argument with Corey Robin, obviously. Also, Jonathan Chait, because this segment would trigger him. So, Jonathan Chait, for being a humorless bore.
Jonathan Chait did an article saying, I was wrong to ever give Ilhan any sort of the benefit of the doubt. And he used the exact same picture, or whoever was picking the picture.
Fuck you.
Whoever was picking the picture for Chait's column used the exact same picture of her that was used by the West Virginians when they're like...
Jonathan Chait.
Proof that we forgot.
Marty Peretz, who somehow escaped to Israel but should have been put in the gulag years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Ringo out misspoke. Elliot Angle.
Okay, Elliot Angle. Big fucking time, Elliot Angle. Venezuela coup and Ilhan Omar.
Oh, Elliot Abrams.
Elliot Abrams, gulag. Donna Shalala.
Oh, yeah.
Gonna need to build some more gulag.
She used to be my university president.
And Nicki Minaj. Because we support Cardi B here.
Most
for
of
Daddy
Liberty
Birdie, bitch.
University.
Sorry?
Most of Liberty University staff.
The most Liberty University staff, for sure. And DJ Envy. He's a little annoying. All right. Well, I like Charlemagne, but you're a patron, so Charlemagne. All right. Omnibus Gulag, everybody. We have time for one final call. I'm sorry we cannot get to everybody, but you've been waiting quite some time. You're calling from a 347 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mike. It's me, Mike from Gravesend. What's up?
Hey, Mike. What's going on? What's on your mind?
Oh, not much. Just wanted to actually just say some points I noticed to Ben.
Mm-hmm.
I met Ben at the at the live show in Union Hall. Yeah, we actually talked for a little bit. I think you even made a video where you addressed me personally about the ad hom.
Oh, yeah. You were wearing the Red Sun t-shirt.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. Yes.
Right, yeah. Yeah, thanks to the vid, by the way. It did clear up things about the ad hoc stuff, because that is like one of the really confusing points in the logical fallacy stuff. I just wanted to actually just say, like, one of the things I noticed whenever, like, people, not just you, but, like, whenever anybody debates conservatives,
yeah.
The thing I noticed about them, I kind of said this to you, is that a lot of it just seems to be about aesthetics more than anything else, right? Like, they'll claim for whatever the fuck, like freedom of speech, free markets, whatever, but it's all just, they like the idea of being for those things. They don't actually get the substance for them. Yeah, and I don't know, it kind of just, it's just something I've noticed from conservatives these days, is that, like, there's just something totally, it's like they're kind of, there's no content to their ideas. Like, there's nothing there. It's like, once you get past the pretension, it's just like there's just this raw, nasty emotion to it. Matt Christman kind of commented on that on the last Chapo episode, where he's just like, there's like this weird, just nihilism of just like, yeah, let's just enjoy this power we have. It's just, I don't know, it's just something I've noticed.
Thanks for the call, man. I'll let Ben get to it. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's absolutely true. I think that, I mean, look, we've talked a couple times tonight about Ben Shapiro, and he certainly makes your point about this. And I think some of this is the left's fault because to the extent that we're only interested in, mockery and condemnation and, privilege checking people and all that stuff, we kind of leave the field to these guys and they don't really have to up their game to like match what we're doing. But I think it is absolutely a sign of the superficiality and ridiculousness of contemporary American conservatism that like their anointed logic guy, their cool kids philosopher is Ben Shapiro, right? Like any political culture that like calls Ben Shapiro an intellectual clearly does not have a lot to offer.
Sad. All right, absolutely the final call of the night. You're calling from an 818 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. This is Dave from Jamaica. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Well, since you guys are pressed for time, I'll try to condense this really quick. So you saw that bit of a train wreck of the Breakfast Club interview with Bernie?
I don't know that it was a train wreck. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. From my perspective, it seems like the guys at the Breakfast Club were angling to get after the morning block or after Morning Joe or something. Because some of the questions were really kind of wacky, like they watched MSNBC as prep time or something.
Right. No, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I think Bernie did fine overall, and I agree that. Yeah, I mean, some of the but I don't think it was like a disastrous performance.
No, Bernie did well. I was more criticizing their questions more than anything else, since they gave time traveling Weedle a pass.
Right.
But what do you think about? I remember a thread that you recommended. I can't remember. It was about the reparations stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I find it very curious that all of a sudden now reparations is an issue and people are getting on Bernie for it, which I think is very disingenuous, if you ask me.
So that's. I feel like there's three different things to say to this, and we will do like an all-white male paddle on reparations right now. But at the same time, I mean, look, it's the same thing I've been saying to some extent in a very different way, though, about Israel, which is that these are also political issues, and we're all going to talk about them and hash them out. And so that's the number one. The starting point is the double standard and the disingenuousness of nailing Bernie on it is ludicrous, and I will not back down on it, and I will not accept that frame because it's a bullshit frame. The second point, or actually three more points. I mean, one, it's like he's not answering those questions well, but what might be true is that he might oppose reparations. They're policy disagreements. He might oppose it. In fact, it sounds like he does. Now,
I'll give you a shot.
Now, the third and fourth point I would make is that I think that what is also really a huge problem is that what Kamala Harris is doing and what Elizabeth Warren is doing to an extent is actually what people who supported Bernie tried to make the argument in 2016, which is that if you support, and it is true, by the way, objectively, if you implemented Bernie's agenda, it would be the largest transfer of wealth from white to non-white in this nation's history. That's objective fact. But what they're doing, though, people like Kamala Harris, though, she said explicitly in an interview, I won't do something that will explicitly help African Americans, but it will disproportionately help them because of how poverty is concentrated. Now, that's true. But what she's doing is she's actually diluting both arguments, which I think the thread that I did from Chad Vigorous on Twitter and Brendan with the Discourse podcast that everybody should listen to. He'll be back on soon. But you're mixing up two really different things, which is that reparations is its own policy, it's its own history, it's its own thing. It doesn't necessarily have to do with these broader arguments about things like Medicare for all. And then on the flip side, when you imply that universal programs, like, you're diluting the broadness of that message. So my fourth point is that I personally support some form of reparations, and I think that there's a really simple way of asking people what their position on this is, which is, do you support Bill H-40, which was the bill that has been introduced in the House that would trigger a process? That bill doesn't go into any specifics. It literally would establish a process of assessing how it would happen. I believe to just always give credit due, Tulsi Gabbard supports that. No other candidate as of now supports that. So the really easy non-bullshit way of asking is, Bernie Sanders, do you support Bill H-40? Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, blah, blah, whoever. And if they support that, then they do. If they don't, they don't. And that's it. And I would advocate they do. I'd also advocate that they have a similar piece of legislation to deal with, Native American Holocaust. And I'd also advocate that this be linked with debt relief and other policies to do with the Caribbean, which in my mind are part of that same conversation. But you have to strike a balance, in my view, between I'll criticize him because I happen to have a different policy view than he does, but I am also not going to submit to a bullshit frame that's isolated cynically just to go at him. I'm not doing it. So that's the dialectic I think that needs to be struck.
Well, I might have a slight disagreement because generally, like I like the general idea of reparations, but the more I think about it, I think it's a very dangerous policy to implement because its potential to divide people who are poor among racial lines is very great if not done correctly. And then we have the tricky issues of what is black and who counts as a descendant of a slave or not. Like, it might be easy for me because I obviously look black, but there you have the category of who are descendants of slaves is so broad now. I'm pretty sure you can find white people who are descendants of African slaves to that point. So I don't know. It seems like a dangerous thing to get invested into because then you have to dive into race science, and that usually doesn't end up.
Well, these are the reasons that Adolph Reed doesn't support it. But I think that the bill H40, HR 40 is about triggering a process that will explore these things, and I think that has a huge amount of merit in and of itself, in my view. But I understand the concerns. Thank you so much for the call.
But that's probably more call, Michael. And big up.
Thank you. All right, everybody. You can finish your point.
Oh, I mean, I support reparations. And I think that Bernie should as well. But I was just going to say a third point that people haven't been listing of the criticism for reparations, which are at least worth engaging with, is what kind of number could you put on the horrors of slavery? Right. Can you say that we pay everybody $5,000 and then you say, okay, well now that's settled. That question is settled. And that's also something that you have to engage with.
Meanwhile, you have all this generational wealth that is still racialized.
Exactly.
So,
right. And to really take that on, some of it absolutely, I think it can and should be some form of reparations, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But to overall take that on is ultimately going to lead to the same sets of those policies that we're talking about.
It's
anyways,
a massive project. It's a massive
redistribution.
project, and it's something that will be very powerful and good. But it's a very big thing to lift up. And like the cynical way that Kamala Harris and all these other people are using, I think is really sick.
Right.
Honestly,
I haven't read this yet, but we've had William or Sandy Darity on Majority Report before. He's written this 40 Acres and a Mule in the 21st Century, and it looks like he's dealt with a lot of the specifics. So if people want something to read, that would be my advice.
Okay, maybe we'll try to get Professor Doherty on, and we are going to have Marsa Baradaran on to talk about that as well. Ben, thank you.
Thank you.
This was a pleasure. Thank you to each and every one of you. A bunch of new people signed up. We'll be back over 2,000 in no time, but 2,100. And then at 2,500, there'll be a spa day selfie. No doubt. I have no problem taking a selfie from one of my many, many spa visits. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Thank you, Forrest. Thanks to each and every one of you. We'll see you Sunday with a new illicit history.